Okay, sorry about that, YouTube. Welcome. We are here with our well balanced discussions. I'm the host, the tour guide. It is September 26, 2022. And let's talk about addiction coming from this book, Perfect in Healing. Let me show you a copy of it right here. So, if anyone's interested in seeing how it looks, you can get that on Amazon. I know they have it for sale. So, let's just jump straight into it. Three major talking points. So, the ABCs of addiction, finding the way back, and then getting plugged in with a couple of resources that might help you. Okay, so on page 148, just in the very beginning, a quote, it says, whether it's tobacco, alcohol, gambling, marijuana, or even chocolate, or things like gambling or soap operas, we're one addicted culture, which I think is pretty accurate. There's like addictions for everything, shopping. I already mentioned gambling. So how do we become addicted though? Most often it's a way to self-medicate, coping with severe emotional problems or some type of trauma. And some children or people may feel neglected as a child, or seeing someone using controlled substances like alcohol to cope with hardships. It may prompt someone to utilize that or establish a new ritual as a coping mechanism. So Dr. David Stoop, PhD, he says, instead of dealing with the reality of relationships, we learn to numb ourselves with some kind of chemical. So that's very, very common. Those with deep-seated fear of rejection are known to turn to sexual addictions, or some may turn to food, in any way to gain some type of control is usually why they opt for addictions. But the thing is, emotions are only part of the problem. Oftentimes, it's really the chemical response that our body develops. Chemicals are designed to help us soothe our sorrows, and there's the receptors in our brains that they take the chemicals and they generate feelings of euphoria, giving us temporary releases of stress. So some of the substances create such great feelings. On 149 it says, if someone shoots you up with heroin, there's a 99% probability you'll become addicted, says Dr. Stoop. Even the most difficult struggle with this. Some of these drugs are very powerful. If the desire for the drugs becomes unmanageable, you become addicted. So, quote says, I want to stop a certain activity or using a substance, but haven't been able to. That becomes your addiction, says Dr. Mark Layson, another PhD. So, through time, though, the addictions, like many people know, it grows stronger and our bodies develop a tolerance to it, which requires more of that substance in order for us to feel good or feel the gratifying feelings that we're looking for. So the consequences of addiction will appear in different ways depending on the substance. So you may lose your job, you start stealing from your friends, you may wreck your marriage or your car, and then the harder addictions can result in enslavement of physical and psychological. The damage is there, more severe consequences, legal, physical ramifications, and essentially, though, addicts will do whatever it is to maintain fulfillment of engagement. So, heading on to segment 2, though, how do we find the way back? In this segment here, they'll give you lots of examples and little small steps for you to kind of walk your way back from the addiction. I also find it very interesting, though, that we are going to be we're going through the book, Forces of Habit, Drugs in the Making of the Modern World. Just a little preview for Friday. Very fascinating that we are in chapter 5, and that one's talking about, essentially, it's called Baited with Pleasure, and it talks about how the controlled substances make you feel and the pleasure aspect of it. So I'm looking forward to getting into that. So if this one, it's interesting that I guess how the timing worked out going through this segment of addiction and then talking about that particular subject matter as to why these substances feel so good and what type of people the book goes into more detail about who is more susceptible or more prone to addictions based off of different contributing factors. So looking forward to getting into Forces of Habit with you guys to really get into this subject matter. Okay, so let's continue on with segment 2 though. Finding the way back. On page 150, quote, it says, if you always do what you did, you always get what you got. That's a reference, Charles Zeider's Doctor of Psychology, he shares. So if you're constantly at the bar surrounded by drunk people and you want to quit drinking alcohol, it's suggested that maybe you need to stop going into that environment or doing the same things. So some little small steps of walking it back. So first and foremost, hand it over to God. 151, Dr. Stoop shares, the only one who can manage our messes is God. And we have to turn the control of our lives over to Him. That's the basic message of salvation. That's the message of the gospel. And it's the message as recovery as well. So I also recommend you see a doctor. So a detox center may be necessary depending on the severity of it. With a detoxification process, you may actually need medication to help counteract the lethal responses during the detox process. So if you've been an alcoholic, heavily consuming it for like decades, and you suddenly want to stop, you're going to need help with that. Same with other harder drugs. So definitely contact your doctor. Next, change of scenery. So seek people who care about your recovery and your well-being. So make amends. This is also a very crucial step in part of your recovery. List of names of people you've wronged or hurt during your addictive period. Repay debts or apologize if you've caused harm. 151. This is where people get stuck, says Dr. Stoop. That we have to redeem ourselves, as painful as it might be. If this is overlooked, it can short circuit the whole recovery process. So definitely can relate and probably need to definitely pay back some debts. We're working on it. We have not forgotten. So develop humility. 151. Not shame, but humility, says Dr. Stoop. Making amends helps develop the humility process. Admitting we're powerless and putting everything in God's hands is super important. So let's go on. Oh, hold on. Before we go on to segment 3, let's talk about telling others. So remain in the process and share your story. A lot of people find recovery, or the ones who are years and years sober, who are still saying that, I'm an addict. I always will be, but what keeps them going is sharing their story, their success, helping other people. And also, if you need accountability, if you need support, it's good to open up and share your story. So that's a very crucial and vital part. So hang on for segment 3 as we can kind of plug you into a few more resources. Let me just put a quick note in here. Okay. So going on to segment 3, get plugged in and resources. So Pray for Healing 151 and 152 says, one study that looked at 20 Northern California Alcoholics Anonymous groups found that prayer helped drive out the use of alcohol. Those AA members who practiced the 11th step, quoted part of it saying, through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, they reported being sober longer and felt like they had more purpose in life. 152 says, I am convinced from my interviews with these people that the phenomenon does occur, and that's from Dr. Zeiders. Having a vision helps. Giving an addict a vision of who they are and what they can truly do with their calling helps them disengage from the addiction. So sense of purpose in life, sense of I'm doing something, contributing. I know why I'm here. I know what I'm for. I know who I'm here to serve. All comes into play. Getting plugged in. So very important for the church fellowship, community. So church groups, 12-step program, a counselor can offer change. So definitely getting connected with community. There's groups like Celebrate Recovery and Adult and Teen Challenge. Definitely look into those resources. And then lastly, discover true love. Many addicts don't believe that they are truly loved. Many are freed when they experience God's love, and aiding people in the process is part of their healing. So that's all they have for this segment from the book Prayer, Faith, and Healing. Again, the subject matter was on addiction, a quick little overview. But interestingly enough, we're going to be going through our book, Forces of Habit, Drugs in the Making of the Modern World. Chapter 5 goes into a lot more detail about who becomes an addict, why they become an addict. Is it societal expectations? Is it personality? Is it religious morality? So many different reasons. So we were supposed to talk about it last week, had to take a quick break, but I'm looking forward to getting back into this book and understanding the addictive properties and who's more susceptible to addiction. So with that, I've been the host, the tour guide. At any point in time you're consuming this, I can only hope you're doing well. Thank you so much for tuning in, and as always, God's peace.